Okay, so we started moving on to scene 8 and 9 and doing the rehearsal, and this is the rehearsal process of scene 8 and 9. Scene 8 and 9 are probably the biggest scenes that I do in terms of the amount of characters on stage. I'm talking a lot because I play quite loud and opinionated characters in these both. So I play Emma in scene 8 and scene 9. I play Daisy, who is Emma's daughter. And when talking about these scenes initially, we looked at a lot about the line structure, the direction of how to say the lines, like the tone-wise, but there wasn't a lot of physical direction, and I think that I'm starting to figure out that that's what's happening in this rehearsal process, that we are looking at the more physical aspects and the physical acting rather than the lines, the way the lines are said, and the tone and voice. It was more focused on the physicalisation of things. So I'm going to start with scene 8. Scene 8... I have more of an understanding and a development on Emma's character. I talked about how I felt that she wasn't a very nice character, but I felt how she was justified in the way she felt towards Toby, especially because Toby cheated on her. But because I understand why they would both feel like this, the relationship would never work because of the time that was set in. That feeling that Emma was trapped by social responsibility, but sort of felt jealous of Carol and all the attention that Carol got. I think she would have liked to have been and ended up with someone like John. She needed that reassurance and that connection. Toby never gave that to her. I think she didn't realise that, and I think she probably would have been similar to Carol in her situation. She feels like Carol's overreacting and made life hard for John. So in this scene, it's her talking about that and her feelings towards Carol, and I think they all know that she doesn't really get along well with Carol, but it's sort of this underlying, she does actually care about her, she cares about the family, but she cares about reputation a lot as well, which is sort of like a more middle upper class type ideology. So in regards to that, looking more at the scene and how we rehearsed it more, I tried to add more characterisation, more motivations that I had learned about Emma in this scene. I think me and Bruce worked on a lot the interaction between Toby and Emma. We found that we could sort of play off each other a lot, and sometimes it depended on the way I said the lines, who I said them to, so either if I said them to John or to Toby. A lot of the lines that I cut off for him were said differently. I cut off his lines more, and we discussed which lines would be better to cut off and to not, so that we had this interaction still and it still made sense, but so that it shows how Emma doesn't really listen to Toby and how this relationship is toxic. We started using and looking at props, so throughout the whole scene there's wine glasses and a bottle of wine. John is trying to open the bottle of the wine in the beginning, and then it's being poured, and the idea that Toby is an alcoholic is brought up later on. So I think for him to drink more, we thought about the idea of giving him more to drink, for him to drink more, and it's sort of after Emma speaks, so it's sort of this connection with how he deals with Emma because she's such a big personality in the whole situation. Obviously, this has happened before, this interaction, this whole family interaction has happened before. They're used to Emma reacting the way she does, and that's why I think John finds this slightly amusing in some of the things he says, especially when Emma talks about Toby's sister, the aunt of Daisy, and how he says, you know, she's pretty stiff competition, and then Emma goes to talk about how she smells like a men's bathroom and stuff like that and has a speech impediment. So it's something that John would find amusing at this point, and we looked more about that and more about how this is a serious thing that they're talking about, but it's quite a funny conversation as well, and it's quite light-hearted at some point, so it would make the audience laugh, and it shows the character interaction. Even when Carol's not in the room, you could sort of feel that John is trying to protect her because he defends her so much. So looking at the scene more, we were told at specific points to interact and to react with different things. There was a lot more pause when it came to John answering, and I think that's just the way that Peter plays John, because I don't think Marlon plays John like that, but the way that Peter played John, there was a lot more pause, and I think it was good in the sense that it allowed the audience to evaluate who was who and who was talking to who. I think it could make the pace a bit quicker. I think he can't afford to do pauses and things like that in the end, but because of our rehearsal period, he could afford to do that, and that'd help our understanding grow. When looking at the actual, some of the lines, the way they were said, I have to say my monologue, the short monologue, the like little paragraph that Emma rants about when she talks about having another baby, or something is usually another baby or another man. That line was directed to sort of split it apart, so have another baby or another man, and the men were supposed to react and take a drink, and I think that that's something that we've just looked at now and trying to do and trying to work on. Obviously we don't have that many props, we don't have a table, the table that we're going to use yet, but this is working well, and I think in rehearsal people are finding it funny, and I think it's good because it shows the contrast between the men and the women and how the men are sort of sticking together and against Emma. But she's still dominating, she's still quite a powerful character, quite opinionated, quite a strong character. There's another bit where it coincides with Bonnie's line when she is talking to her rabbit, and I think we all have to take a drink then, and I think that this works to create an airport pause about how Emma can't hold herself back because she obviously goes into the rant that she next says. So when looking at how to improve on this scene, we've obviously worked on so much more direction, so much more meaning and motivation behind it, but I think to actually get the movement to work in precise, because it's often been not timed perfectly, or because this scene is so fast paced, we forget lines or cut lines out, or forget important bits for the characters to say or cut them off too soon. So I think rehearsal, just basic line rehearsal, is really important for this scene, to get this scene right. And also for Carol's entrance, we still haven't figured out exactly how she's going to drop the dish, what the dish is going to have in it, or what it's going to create when it falls, if it's going to smash and food's going to go everywhere. So we still haven't figured out what exactly we're going to do for that, and at that point when Carol comes in and how she's going to have an interaction with the other characters, the male characters on stage. But I think we're going to find out when more towards the time, and I think we need to work on that a bit more. But I think my understanding for them, the characters, and my understanding for Emma has become a lot more developed, so that's how we've worked on that scene. The overlapping of the lines towards the end, we've also worked on a lot, and I think it works really well. My timing is cues from John, and we all have each other as cues, and I think that we've rehearsed really well and actually is quite effective in showing the family dynamic and the chaos at the same time whilst Carol's there, and I think it'll show the chaos going on in her head at the same time. Next on to scene 9. Scene 9 is a very similar scene to scene 8, and I think it's funny how Alice Birch decided to do it so that it was like that from one to another. And also, she had also written that the same character who was playing Emma is also playing Daisy, and this is the same cast. And I only just realised this, so I think it's an interesting thing to see the same character, the same actress play both consecutively. So I think this is going to be interesting in the end, but I'm going to talk about the development of Daisy now and how the character development worked and how I feel I understood more in this scene. So I'm starting to understand Daisy's character as a whole. So far I'd thought about her as the way I've played her and understood her through the scenes, but I've also had to look at some of the scenes that Leah plays Daisy when she's young, and some of the things match up. So when Daisy was little, she was trying to copy Carol smoking and trying to act all, tough. She goes and she looks at all the alcohol bottles and she pretends to smoke, and she is drinking at her dad's party, and is going up to her auntie and asking all these questions and like stuff like that, and it's not a normal sort of, she's quite a bit like her mother. So when I tried to play her, I tried to play her quite a bit like her mother when she was older. She ends up smoking. She ends up not being able to hold down a man. She ends up being a bit reckless and not that well grounded, but sort of similar to her mum in the way she holds herself. They're quite intimidating. They've got a major presence. They're quite dominating of the scenes and wherever they are, and it doesn't matter that there's a man there, and in this social time the man would usually take charge or be the more influential character. It doesn't make any difference. In that scene, she's the one who's taking charge. So in that respect, I learned a lot more about how to play Daisy, in that she's laughing, she's joking, she's shouting, she takes the piss out of Jamie a lot, and I think that's because she doesn't really like men. I've talked about how her father was fucking the nanny, and she talks about that in the speech that she says in this scene, and when she rants to Jamie, and when she's talking to him and talking to Anna and Jamie. But she also, I think she feels like women can stand up for themselves, and because she's an independent woman, I feel like she thinks that Anna should be able to stand up for herself too. She knows what Anna's been through, but I think she feels slightly protective over Anna because she knows Anna hasn't had anyone else, because Carol killed herself when Anna was only 16 and John had gone crazy. So I think she feels a bit guilty for Anna's life and wants to sort of look after her, but isn't the sort of person who's a caring mother type, because obviously she isn't there when Anna needs her the most, so she's too busy for that. She's being an air hostess, looking after herself really. And I don't think she's a really selfish character. She's slightly, because she only really thinks about herself in the fact that she has got a nice job and she talks about herself a lot, but I don't think that means she doesn't care about Anna. She just really perhaps is more involved in herself. So some of the direction in the scene I had to work on gestural smoking. So in the sense that it wasn't just a physical object, because obviously we had some props earlier on and we had cigarettes earlier on in this process. So I had to, am focusing on how to smoke in the sense that it's not just something there, it's something that builds on her character. And I think because there was hints to the smoking earlier on in the beginning scenes with young Daisy, it has to be like she's done it for a while. It has to be that she doesn't see it as a big deal, or perhaps doesn't really like that she does, because in one of the previous lines she says, well, we'd all rather I didn't smoke. But she can't help it because she keeps asking Jamie if she can smoke, Jamie and Anna mainly. So when she's smoking, she's also visualising this man. I said these lines before about the man saying that she was going out with. He was terribly kind. He was a scientist, real one. He had huge arms. And Chip and Starbuck both said to visualise it more. Visualise the man, as if Daisy was visualising them. And I think that I am doing this well, but I think to coincide with the smoking, I think I need to time it better so that my lines are said and coinciding with the other lines that are being said on the other sides, so that it doesn't create massive pauses and awkward pauses for the other scenes as well as mine. On this stage as well, there was more interaction between Anna and Daisy, and we looked at more of Anna's moving around when she's saying about feeling that there was hope is here, and all that small little monologue that she does. She was initially just sitting down and she was told to stand up, to come over, put her hand on her belly, because she was pregnant and she was going to have a baby, and to put one hand on Daisy too. I think that this shows a different type and side to Anna that we hadn't seen before, but I think I understand why he wants her to do that, why he's directed them to do that, and I think that more rehearsal could help improve the sort of feelings that it gives, because I think it makes Anna seem too sane at this point. But I think that it's partly good because it wants her to be like that, because there's nothing wrong right now and she feels like she's got her stuff together. But Daisy doubts this still, for good reason really. But I think that we need to think about more having this slight eerie sense in the background. I mean, with the other scenes going on at the same time, it does give that, especially Carol's side when she's talking with John about not wanting another baby and stuff like that. But I think it needs to have more of a sense of eeriness, because the baby, you could say the baby in the end is the reason why Anna did take her own life, because of prenatal depression or something along those lines. So learning more about this scene, those were the main direction points that we were given. We're going to work on actually using the props more. We have to eat on stage, so we need to work on obviously eating and timing that with the lines, and not the way the table is placed, making sure that we're not facing the back too much or turning one way too much, making sure the audience can still see us but the interaction is honest between the characters, because I feel like Anna and Daisy have a real connection in this scene, but that also it changes around a lot, because Daisy's interaction with Jamie gives you the impression that she doesn't really like Jamie very much. Also to say, in scene 9 I also played Jo. In the Jo and Bonnie scene, Jo and Bonnie's scene is like in a pub garden and there's a wedding over there and they're looking at it, and Jo is basically talking about how she misses Bonnie, but she's got a date but she can't let Bonnie go. And a lot of it wasn't given much direction. There wasn't much change in our rehearsal period. We were working on making sure that it fits in with the other scene and the lines, because the line gaps are really awkward. There's 2 over one side and then 1 over the other, and 2 over the one side and 1 on the other, and then it goes one after the other, but it keeps changing around the structure of it, so I think that's something that we need to work on, because it messes it up a little bit and the structure of it all. But I find that it doesn't always work that well when we don't know our lines, and obviously our cues at this point. When playing Jo, it's about this sort of bubbly sort of nature, but I think also looking at more of her motivations, I understand more of her motivations now, that she is a bit nervous, but that she's kind of desperate. I mean, you see this other side to her where she's embarrassed and she's desperate, and she really cares about Bonnie, but she feels like Bonnie's not responding. I mean, one of the major lines in this scene is when Jo says to Bonnie, "Fuck you, I was definitely telling you fucking everything." And it's this outburst that you've not really seen from a character like Jo before, because she's got properly angry for the first time, and you've always seen her either passionate or funny or light-hearted, and not someone to take seriously. I think this is the first time that you can take her seriously, really. And she was saying how she really does like Bonnie, not you as nurse, not you as significantly worse, she says. And I think understanding this a lot more, we use this, and our direction was to stand up when she says "fuck you, I was definitely telling you fucking everything," to shout this line, not in a spiteful or really frustrated way, but in a slightly angry way and in a desperate way, like, I'm putting the effort in and I want to be with you, but I feel like you're the one shutting me out. And I think that's what she's saying in her head, but because Jo cares about Bonnie too much, she doesn't want to say that. She doesn't want to physically shut her out, and she'll keep making effort to be with her. And that links to the next scene, in scene 10, which I'll talk about once we've rehearsed this a bit more, because I have more an understanding of that scene and how we might be working on it and how we might progress with it all. But I'm going to do the rehearsals of those and then talk about that. So in terms of all of those scenes, these rehearsals have helped us understand the characters a lot more, and how to do them a lot more, and I think that with a bit more rehearsal we'll figure out the timings, and it will be better.